It's an allegation. You are making allegations against a company owned by Americans, and you have to prove it in court.
Who owns that company? Who owns that company? ByteDance. ByteDance is owned by China.
No, it's not. See, that's a lie, and you're defaming the country. You're defaming the company.
Fox News' Brian Kilmeade and Republican Senator Rand Paul sparred over whether the Senate should pass legislation to ban TikTok. The same legislation that, of course, the House passed rapidly yesterday in an effort to basically crush what they believe is a national security threat and a propaganda machine pushed on young people in America by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, all House Republicans and 37 Democrats in the House of Representatives voted to ban the social media app. So hearing Republicans speak out against the idea of banning it is actually kind of rare. And so Rand Paul is against the ban over concerns that it would violate constitutional rights to freedom of expression. Let's hear more of what he had to say.
60% of it is owned by international investors, 20% is owned by the software developers who are Chinese, and 20% is owned by the employees, 7,000 of whom are Americans. So it's a complicated
controls the algorithm?
But it's not owned by the government.
It's not about profits. Who owns the algorithm?
TikTok owns their own algorithm, and it's actually not in China.
TikTok? ByteDance. And who owns ByteDance? The Chinese government.
No, they don't. See, you've just told a lie, Brian. You can't say on TV something that's a lie about a company. That is an out-and-out lie, and it's provably false.
What is a lie?
And they're not owned by the Chinese government. TikTok is owned privately, and the algorithm's not in China.
So look, it's interesting because Kilmeade pushing the argument that the content on TikTok is the problem, right? And that the algorithm emphasizing certain content over other content, him saying that that's a problem because it indoctrinates youth here in America and all of that stuff, is a really bad argument if you want the ban to withstand the muster of our courts and our Constitution, right? So as the Washington Post reports, Americans choose to use TikTok to express themselves. Paul said Tuesday, I don't think Congress should be trying to take away the First Amendment rights of 170 million Americans.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what you think about that argument.
Yeah, a lot of mainstream media don't give you honest news. We do, you know why? Because of you. Paid membership on YouTube makes all the difference. Hit the join button below and you become the hero that sustains us. So first of all, Rand Paul is completely right. But as you're about to find out, for all the wrong reasons. So I said that this was going to start happening soon a couple of years ago, and it has now begun. So first, corporate donors started buying all of our politicians. And I wrote a book called Justice Coming in chapter 4. I explained how they took over the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party. And so they all serve corporations now. Now, having said that, because all the elections are privately financed in America, so if private interests give you money, you serve private interests, right? So, but what I said was soon the corporations will start to fight each other. So it'll turn into an auction. So different corporations will buy different politicians. And as you're about to see, Rand Paul is actually bought by one of the owners of TikTok. But all the other media hates TikTok because it's competition. So Rand Paul happens to be telling the truth here, but not out of the goodness of his heart. And wait till you see the actual force behind all of these attacks against TikTok. It ain't Republicans or Democrats or politicians or even a country. You'll see, okay? And it tells you everything you need to know about American politics and media.
So look, to be fair to Rand Paul, he's not the only lawmaker who is concerned about the constitutional issues with a TikTok ban. In fact, the Washington Post also notes that the bill's supporters also have some concerns. They've questioned whether it will face the same fate as former President Donald Trump's executive order, which attempted to ban TikTok. That was blocked by the courts based on constitutional grounds. So this was in 2020, and federal courts ruled the government had not adequately proved that the app presented a national security threat. And really, if you want the law to withstand the court system, you should not focus on the content of TikTok, because that's what will probably get that law blocked. You should focus on the possibility of a national security threat, which I noticed some of the politicians focusing on, others I guess didn't really get the memo. And the issue with that is they haven't proven that the algorithm is a national security threat. So I want to just give you a few excerpts from the piece explaining what I mean. So federal officials have provided no public examples of the Chinese government harvesting Americans' data or altering TikTok's algorithms in the 5 years since they launched a national security investigation into the app. In fact, FBI Director Christopher Wray, highlighting the risks, has said any tweaks to the app's algorithm would be something we wouldn't readily detect, which makes it more of a pernicious threat. Said another US official, the concern is very real and based on known behavior by the CCP, or Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, I can't stand this. So let me take this one at a time. First of all, the Chinese Communist Party does not own ByteDance or TikTok. 2 Chinese nationals do. If you say, hey, they might be transferring it and hence it's a national security issue, okay, great. Because I don't want the Chinese having my information. I have TikTok too, right? So then show me a way that you block that. By the way, we already have that. It actually goes through Oracle. Oracle can block it, and there's not a single Chinese national, as far as I understand, on the board of ByteDance. So they would all have to magically agree, let's transfer the information to China, including the international investors, including the American investors. And so that's how a board works, right? So this idea that it's being siphoned by the Chinese government has not ever been proven. It's just, so now go to the second thing that the FBI director said. Well, they could change their algorithm at any moment. Well, so can Facebook and YouTube and Google and Amazon. And well, that doesn't serve a foreign government. Well, who does it serve? It serves that particular corporation's interests. So manipulating the American people on behalf of Amazon and Facebook is fantastic, but manipulating them on behalf of China, theoretically, even though we've never proven it, is awful. I think that both are a concern. And so when you look at the constitutional issue, Anna's absolutely right. When you say this company is making people have an opinion I don't like, hence I would like to ban them, you cannot find a more core First Amendment violation ever. That is the government banning speech it doesn't like. So it is absurd. Like everyone who voted for this, including all the dumbass Democrats that voted with the Republicans on this, are saying, yeah, we don't care about the First Amendment, we don't care about the Constitution, or we don't even know it. We're so stupid, we can't even understand the easiest things about the US Constitution. And so, guys, this is all engineered to make you get off TikTok, because TikTok is very progressive and they don't like that. And it's competition to other media, and they definitely don't like that. So they're trying to bury it under the guise of protecting you.
Look, my problem with this is I actually don't have a super strong opinion on whether it makes sense to ban it or not. And part of the reason why is I don't feel like I can trust the purveyors of information here. Like the people who are coming out with the claims of it's a national security threat, or oh, no, it's not a national security threat, it's owned by private investors. Like, and the reason why I say it is because there's money corrupting both sides of that argument, and it's super significant money. I'm talking about tens of millions of dollars in the case of Rand Paul, by the way.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to the donors in 1 second, but I just want to explain. Guys, the burden is on the people saying that you should ban an entire company. So show me any evidence that they have gotten our information to the Chinese government, and now we're having a conversation. But you have no evidence at all. It is definitely a private company. There is actual objective reality. There are people who own it. They are giant investors. They're international investors. Yes, some of them are Chinese nationals, but the Chinese government definitely does not own ByteDance or TikTok. That is not in dispute. If you hear anyone saying the Chinese government owns it, they're lying to you on purpose, or they're totally ignorant. They just go on air without ever checking anything.
No, China doesn't own ByteDance, but I think that you also have to be honest about how ByteDance is based in Beijing. China's government is an authoritarian government.
Of course, but where are their servers based? So the servers are based in America. So that makes a giant difference. But again, if you showed me evidence, well, the servers are going from the US to China and the Chinese government could have access to it. Okay, interesting. I'm totally ready for that evidence. But if you say, I have no evidence at all, but they're my competitor and I don't like them, so I'd like to pretend they're doing it. No. And I'd like to take away the outlet for massive free speech and massive diversity of opinion of young people all across the country and across the world because I don't like their opinion. No, I am 100% against the ban on TikTok. I think it's dumb, I think it's corrupt and totally pointless.
So let's get into the money. So we had shared with you all earlier in the week that Donald Trump had done a complete 180 on the notion of banning TikTok. Remember in 2020, he tried to ban it through an executive order. And then suddenly he's like, no, we shouldn't ban it. It would empower Facebook and he's not in favor of that. Well, we found out that Trump's been courting a billionaire political donor by the name of Jeffrey Yass or Jeff Yass. And Jeff Yass owns a 15% stake in TikTok. So he wants a return on his investment. He does not want it to be banned here in the United States. Since he is a donor to Donald Trump has completely changed gears on TikTok. So that's one example of money in politics. Let's get to whether or not Jeff Yass has any influence on Rand Paul, who's also against a ban on TikTok. We looked into this and it turns out that, apparently Yass is a Rand Paul donor by a lot. FEC records indicate Yass's favorite politician on the national scene is Paul, meaning Senator Rand Paul. Yass has given at least $23 million to Paul's political committees since mid-2015 when Paul was running for president. I don't even remember him running for president, but he did. But there's more. So there's a super PAC known as Kentucky Freedom, and it supports Republican Rand Paul's, it supported Rand Paul's reelection back in the 2022 midterms. Well, in March of 2021, Yass bankrolled Kentucky Freedom with a stunning contribution of $5 million. Yass is one of only 3 people who have ever given any money to Kentucky Freedom. The other donors bring the total receipts for Kentucky Freedom to nearly $6.2 million. So out of that $6.2 million, Jeff Yass contributed $5 million, okay? So by far the biggest donor to this super PAC supporting Senator Paul was Jeff Yass, but it wasn't all that Yass gave to Rand Paul. Yass has been responsible for contributions of an additional $5.2 million to a different Paul super PAC called Protect Freedom. That's $10.2 million in Yass donations to Paul's political committees in less than 2 years.
And of course, that PAC shouldn't be called Protect Freedom. It should be called Protect My Corporate Interests.
Yep.
And that's exactly what Rand Paul has done under the guise of being a libertarian. Again, he happens to be right here, but only because he took a bribe while pretending to be against government and corruption and big government and big business. Oh, we're populist libertarians, are you? Yes, where's your money? Oh, I'm begging you, oh, give me more, I'll do anything you say. Okay, so that's how politics works. So this is Trump and Rand Paul saying, yes, queen, and following orders as they are told. Now, get a load of this, why I was trying to break in when Anna was talking about Yaz. Breaking news, Donald Trump is saying that he might pick Yaz as his Treasury Secretary.
Oh my God.
Now remember guys,
oh my God.
All of these Republicans, including Donald Trump, proposed a ban on TikTok. When Trump was president, he proposed a ban on TikTok. Jeff Yass comes in and goes, hey, you little servants, who the hell did you think you are? I'm in charge, not you. Now shut up and reverse your position. And Trump did, and now a giant portion of the Republican Party has shifted their position because of the bribes given by Jeff Yass. And we're worried about Chinese interference in our elections, and we're worried that the Chinese are influencing America. It's the donors that rule us.
Yeah, but corporate rule is okay.
Yeah.
All right, it's as American as apple pie these days.
Yaz is our queen. Yaz is the one that they serve, okay? And so keep it real. Now let's get to one other factor that's affecting this, and that's Facebook.
Right, so on the other side of the debate, the group that really, really wants a TikTok ban is Facebook. And Facebook has, bankrolled or funded or worked along with a group known as Targeted Victory to push out messaging and plant stories in the press, egging on a TikTok ban. And so this was a piece published in the Washington Post back in 2022. Let me give you a few excerpts. Facebook paid GOP firm to malign TikTok.
Of course, I told you.
Okay, let me give you some excerpts though. Placing op-eds and letters to the editor in major regional news outlets promoting dubious stories about alleged TikTok trends that actually originated on Facebook, and pushing to draw political reporters and local politicians into helping take down its biggest competitors. That was the agenda. That was the objective for Targeted Victory. In fact, employees with Targeted Victory worked to undermine TikTok through a nationwide media and lobbying campaign portraying the fast-growing app as a danger to American children and society. So some of this messaging might have just originated from this group that was paid for by Facebook. And let me continue with the rest of that. According to internal emails shared by the Washington Post. And then one more excerpt that's relevant. One of the directors of the firm said that Targeted Victory needs to get the message out that while Meta is the current punching bag, TikTok is the real threat, especially as a foreign-owned app that is #1 in sharing data that young teens are using.
So guys, who can you trust and who can't you trust
in
the media? Well, there's one group you can trust, us. Why? Because we tell you things ahead of time, and then you get to see if we're full of crap or if we're right. We told you that the politicians are all being bought off by corporate interests, and you see it spectacularly here. I told you that what a lot of times the attacks against social media are actually from other media organizations because they view them as competitors. In fact, Facebook is now doing it to TikTok, but where did they get it from? CNN and other mainstream media did it to Facebook. They started running stories about Facebook and YouTube. Oh, it's so dangerous. You and advertisers shouldn't spend a dime there. Boy, they are affecting the children. The children are very hurt by them. Remember, all the money should go to television advertising. Now Facebook is doing the same exact thing. Now remember, TikTok is hurting the children. Remember everybody go over to Facebook. And what do? They all hire lobbyists to buy off all of our politicians, and then they have the politicians lie on their behalf. But the hilarious thing now is that since it's turned into an auction, we have different corporate interests buying off different politicians and having a battle with themselves. And so now that's why we have the ironic situation where Rand Paul is accidentally telling the truth about TikTok because he was bought off by one of the owners of TikTok. Welcome to America, where everything is about corruption.